Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff, Field Marshal Asim Munir, reportedly delivered an extraordinary and aggressive message during a private, black-tie dinner in Tampa, Florida. According to multiple accounts, he referenced a past social media post that paired the Quranic chapter Surah Al-Fil with a photograph of Indian industrialist Mukesh Ambani. Munir is quoted as saying he had got a tweet done to signal what Pakistan would do next time, in effect, symbolically threatening India's economic infrastructure. He escalated the rhetoric by invoking nuclear scenarios, warning that Pakistan could take half the world down, and delivering a metaphor that likened India to a shiny Mercedes and Pakistan to a dump truck full of gravel, implying that in a collision, India would sustain greater damage. These remarks were interpreted by analysts as the clearest articulation, yet of a willingness to target economic assets alongside traditional military objectives in any future conflict with India. Turning to Pakistan's own critical industrial backbone, a handful of facilities underpin much of the nation's agricultural, energy, and construction capability. Their locations and outputs can be identified through open-source intelligence, and their loss in wartime would have immediate and long-lasting effects on Pakistan's economy. The first and most strategically important among them is the Engro Fertilizers Daharki complex, located in Daharki town, Ghatki district, Sindh province. This enormous facility hosts two main urea plants. The long-running base plant, originally commissioned in the late 1960s and since upgraded, with a capacity approaching 950,000 metric tons per year, and the NVEN plant, a modern single-train ammonia urea complex rated at approximately 1,300,000 metric tons per year. Together, they give Engro Daharki an annual urea production capability of roughly 2,275,000 metric tons. This is bolstered by an additional compound fertilizer plant producing around 100,000 metric tons of NPK fertilizers per year at Port Qasim in Karachi. The economic significance of Daharki is enormous. Urea is the primary nitrogen fertilizer used in Pakistani agriculture, which itself accounts for about 23% of gross domestic product and is a livelihood source for tens of millions of people. Engro's scale allows Pakistan to avoid heavy and costly urea imports in normal years. If Daharki were knocked offline, especially around sowing seasons, the immediate effect would be a shortfall of millions of tons of urea, steep domestic price spikes, and emergency imports draining foreign exchange reserves. In the longer term, reduced fertilizer application would lower crop yields over multiple planting cycles, feeding food inflation, destabilizing rural incomes, and widening the current account deficit through sustained imports of both fertilizer and basic food grains. In the same sector, the Fauji Fertilizer Company operates multiple ammonia urea plants critical to Pakistan's self-sufficiency. The Goth Machhai complex, located in Rahim Yar Khan area, and Plantai II at Mirpur Mathilo in Sindh province together produce several million tons of urea annually, with individual plant capacities ranging roughly from 570,000 to over 700,000 metric tons per year after upgrades. Alongside Engro, Fauji accounts for the bulk of Pakistan's domestic urea supply. Disabling both companies, core plants would create a devastating double shock, forcing the government into fertilizer rationing, triggering massive farm cost increases, and sharply reducing agricultural output nationwide. Pakistan's fuel security hinges on the Pak Arab Refinery Company's mid-country refinery at Mahmudkot, near Multan in Punjab province. Commissioned in the year 2000 at a construction cost of $886 million United States dollars, it has a throughput capacity of 100,000 to 120,000 barrels of crude oil per day. The refinery produces high-speed diesel, jet fuel, mogas gasoline, furnace oil, liquefied petroleum gas, and sulfur, and is integrated into a cross-country pipeline network that connects Karachi's ports to inland demand centers. In peacetime, this reduces reliance on road or rail transport of fuels. In wartime, its loss would cause crippling shortages of diesel for agriculture and transport, jet fuel for military and civilian aviation, and gasoline for the domestic market. Replacement would require rerouting imports from coastal refineries over hundreds of kilometers, adding cost congestion, and vulnerability to further disruption. Cement, a core driver of construction and infrastructure, is dominated by Lucky Cement Limited, the country's largest producer. It operates an integrated plant at Pezu in Laki Marwat district, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, with a northern production capacity of about 10.3 million metric tons per annum, and a southern integrated and grinding plant in Karachi with a capacity of about 5 million metric tons per annum. Combined, Lucky's capacity stands at roughly 15.3 million metric tons annually. Destruction of either the northern or southern hub would cause major shortages, sharply increase prices, halt public infrastructure projects and private housing developments, and kick thousands of workers out of jobs. Long-term effects would include slower infrastructure expansion, reduced foreign direct investment in construction, and contraction in allied industries such as steel rebar, glass, and ceramics. Finally, on the coast near Port Qasim in Karachi lies the sprawling site of the Pakistan Steel Mills, once the largest integrated steel plant in the nation, occupying about 20 square kilometers. At full design, it could produce millions of tons of crude steel per year, serving as an essential supplier to the construction, engineering, and defense sectors. For years, it has been mostly idle, incurring heavy losses, but remains strategically located with deepwater port access, internal rail lines, and industrial infrastructure. The outright loss of the site, even in its reduced operational state, would erase the option for integrated domestic steel revival there and potentially delay the emergence of replacement heavy industry in the Karachi area. The macroeconomic shock of losing these core facilities can be grouped into immediate and long-term phases. In the immediate term, measured in weeks to months, Pakistan would face a severe fertilizer shortage, inland fuel insecurity, cement scarcity, industrial layoffs, and an inflation spike driven by higher food and energy prices. The government would have to fund emergency imports of fertilizer and refined fuels, worsening the fiscal deficit and draining foreign exchange reserves. In the long term, over 6 to 24 months, multiple agricultural seasons could underperform due to lack of affordable fertilizer, pushing up food import bills. Construction slowdowns would drag on gross domestic product and stall job creation. Energy import dependency would remain high, and the current account deficit could become entrenched. Investor confidence would erode, raising borrowing costs. The compounding effect would be a decline in Pakistan's economic resilience precisely when its military and political leadership would require it most. In Operation Sindoor in 2025, Pakistan fired volleys of missiles and drones, yet failed to penetrate and destroy hardened Indian targets, while India struck designated sites across Pakistan with precision standoff weapons and loitering munitions, expanding to multiple locations over 4 days before a ceasefire. India's scale is vast, geographically and economically, and its strike capability has shown high accuracy. The question is how Pakistan sustains itself in a harsh global economy when it is already reliant on multilateral support. Pakistan remains under an International Monetary Fund extended fund facility, with the first review completed in May 2025 and about $1 billion dispersed, plus an approved $1.4 billion resilience and sustainability facility, lifelines that underscore persistent external financing needs. The World Bank, meanwhile, continues project financing in Pakistan and reports a $15.7 billion active portfolio as of 2025, highlighting ongoing dependence on external development flows. Against that reality, Field Marshal Asim Munir's Florida remarks, threatening to take half the world down, vowing missile strikes on Indian infrastructure, and invoking a tweet pairing Surah al-Fil with Mukesh Ambani, reflect a duplicity between escalatory rhetoric and Pakistan's economic fragility, which still requires disciplined reform to stabilize inflation, energy sector finances, and state-owned enterprises under IMF conditions. Survival in today's markets will hinge less on maximalist threats and more on credible reforms, fiscal restraint, and restored investor confidence. Because financing windows from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank come with conditions, scrutiny, and limits. Will India hit the place which will hurt the most in Pakistan? Pak Camera, I have created a separate video on that very important location, which produces fighter jet for Pakistan Air Force. Hit like and subscribe for future uploads.